Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. I'm so excited to be joined by Carl Sharperson today. This episode is going to be all about leadership. Carl grew up in Virginia, went to the Naval Academy, became a Marine aviator, long career in the civilian world, and now runs an executive coaching business. It's a fun discussion. We talk about life, we talk about humanness, we talk about leadership and his experience and how the Naval Academy and his upbringing set the foundation for his leadership philosophy and how he approaches it in today's world. I hope you enjoy the listen. Please give me any feedback you have, any interest in further topics, let me know. Otherwise, enjoy the listen. Thank you so much. Today's episode is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, my for-profit business, and we help Service Academy families buy and sell homes. If you're getting ready or you're thinking about buying or selling or moving anywhere, including Annapolis, please reach out. We'd love to just consult with you, educate, have a conversation, and then get you connected to incredible real estate professionals all across the country. That's our goal. I've had to make it work with being a military spouse, so I've really shifted into this education and connection space. So if you're looking or thinking about buying or selling a home, please reach out. I'd love to help you. It supports the Academy Insider mission. Thank you all so much. Let's jump right into the episode. All right, everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. Carl, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and talk a little bit about leadership. We're going to talk about your book, but really just have a fun conversation about the leadership lessons you've learned over your time through growing up at the Naval Academy, your time in the Marine Corps and after. But before we jump into it, if you don't mind just giving a little introduction about yourself, where you grew up, how you ended up at the Naval Academy, a little bit about your military career and into what you're doing now.
Outstanding. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Grant. I was born in Washington, D.C., in an environment where everybody looked like me. Everybody knew me. At the age of 14, my dad decided to move us to Spotsylvania, Virginia, which is about 60 miles south of D.C. In the eighth grade, halfway through the eighth grade. At that point in time, there were two schools, an all-black school and a white school that had been integrated a little bit. Anyway, I went to the predominantly white school, learned a lot about life, and learned some lessons about life.
Yeah.
Played sports, baseball and football, wanted to go to college. Parents didn't have a whole lot of money. My high school coach was the third most influential person in my life. He's the one that sent the recruiter to my high school to recruit me to play football at the Naval Academy, and I didn't know what the Naval Academy was. It was only 90 miles up the road, primarily because there weren't a whole lot of people that looked like me going to the Naval Academy.
Sure.
I applied, did not get in because I was not academically competitive. My GPA and my SAT scores were not competitive. The Naval Academy Foundation sent me to a prep school in Harlingen, Texas called Marine Military Academy. There I learned to study for the first time. Reapplied, got accepted, entered the academy, played football at the academy, graduated, entered the Marine Corps, went to flight school, became a pilot in the Marine Corps, did 2 6-month Mediterranean deployments and 1 3-month Caribbean deployment while I was in the Marine Corps. Got out of the Marine Corps after 5.5 years. Worked for Procter & Gamble for 7.5 years, worked in a paper plant in Albany, Georgia, Southwest Georgia. It was a pretty unique experience. It was one of the best performing plants in the system. And the thing that was most unique about it was very multicultural mix. The leadership said they wanted to hire the same multicultural mix as the community when they started it up in 1971. So when I got there in 81, 40% of the technicians were African-American, 20% of the managers were African-American, and 20% of the managers were women. Unheard of. You don't even see that today. So I learned a lot from people that looked like me, those that didn't look like me. It was the best performing plant in the system, as well as senior leadership used to send people to the plant to determine what we were doing, how we were doing it. So it was kind of like a flagship plant. Learned a lot there. And my first boss was a 1972 Naval Academy graduate.
Okay.
So that was neat there.
Yeah.
Albany plant started up paper products for 5.5 years, then moved to Cincinnati, Ohio in a staff role. Mm-hmm. After 7.5 years at Procter & Gamble, I decided to go with Frito-Lay in Frankfort, Indiana, just north of Indianapolis. Made chips. I was a manufacturing engineer making Tostitos, Fritos, Cheetos, all those things.
Yeah.
But Procter & Gamble was a very paternalistic organization. They would hire people, train them, promote them.
Yep.
Frito would steal people from Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, and other places and say, you got the money, you got the experience, go make it happen. I don't care how many dead bodies you got, just go get me some cost results. Yep. So I go from a nurturing environment to that environment. I learned a lot in that environment. It's not one I want to be long-term.
Yep.
So I started looking again after 3.5 years. Took a job with Colgate-Palmolive in Topeka, Kansas. It was actually Hill's Pet Nutritions. It was a subsidiary of Colgate-Palmolive. We made Science Diet and prescription cat and dog food. was hired as a plant manager of a union facility. First time I'd ever been in a union or worked in a union system. But I took the skills that I had in the military, Procter& Gamble, Frito-Lay. We took a very traditional union facility and turned it into a high-performing work system where people could do multiple jobs. We were the best performing plant in the system. Oldest plant, only union plant, oldest people, oldest equipment. 20% of the workforce was illiterate, but we were the best performing plant in the system because of all the things that I put together, leadership and diversity and listening to people, basic things that I learned over time. Did that, and then I took a sales job in Topeka for 3 years, constantly moving west. My parents were living in Virginia at the time. My wife's from Florida, wanted to live somewhere between those two states. Took a job as the vice president of manufacturing for Dunlap Schlosinger in Westminster, South Carolina. Moved to Clemson, commuted to Westminster. After about a year, my boss and I agreed to disagree. And then I said, okay, do I want to work for somebody else or do I want to do my own thing? I said, you know what? I'm going to step out on faith and do my own thing. I said, what can I do? I can do speaking, business consulting, executive coaching, strategic planning. So I basically used my Rolodex at the time, my network, contacted people and said, this is what I can do. Do you have any ideas? And that's kind of how I started getting work. So basically what I do now is I help individuals and organizations gain clarity in what they want to do, where they want to go, and then help them develop strategies, 2 or 3 things that they can do that will give them the maximum output to do that, and then put together a roadmap to do that. So that's what I do with individuals as well as organizations. Been married 40 years almost, 39 years plus, 2 kids, and love the Lord and help start up a church. Basically, I try to help people and make this world a better place.
I love that. I love every bit of it. And this, I mean, you're talking an incredible resume and run from time in the Navy and the Marine Corps into the civilian work world and beyond into, business ownership as well. But you talk about, and again, a lot of the questions I'll be asking come out of your book as a result of some of the, the takeaways I had from your book. And so again, if anyone's listening, I will put a link to purchase the book if you want as well, just to take a look at it, Sharp Leadership. But you talk a lot about how the foundation of your leadership, like the foundational leadership lessons that you have, aren't actually from the Naval Academy. They were instilled by your parents in your upbringing. Can you talk a little bit about what your dad instilled in you, and then what you also took away from your mother and how you blended those two, personalities and the lessons you learned from them into your current leadership style?
Okay, outstanding. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that who we are is basically who we're around the most. I was blessed to have a mother and a father in the home at the same time. My father's actually was a Montford Point Marine, so that was before the Marine Corps was integrated. So I learned from him how to be tough. He was very entrepreneurish, asked good questions, continuous learner, and just was a great role model.
Yeah.
He could make friends with anybody, great relationship builder. My mother, on the other hand, was she had an 8th grade education. Her dad was a Virginia tobacco sharecropper. But by the time she died, she was a master seamstress, master chef, baker. She was the community counselor, and I never heard her say a disparaging word against anybody.
Yeah.
She just loved on people and people loved on her. So the combination of those, I think I've took a little bit of both of those personalities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, you got to have a little of the balance, right? Got to have a little balance, especially in the entrepreneurial world where you are dealing with a lot of people, right? You got to have that figure it out mentality, that message to Garcia mentality, work really hard, but you also got to love on people. You got to take care of people, right? It's a big piece of all of it. And you've mentioned a couple times, about even in your growing up in schools still being, not integrated at times, although you being in a primarily white school in your town. Can you talk a little bit about what you experienced in terms of racism and racial tension in your upbringing, as well as through your time in the Navy and Marine Corps? I'm really interested to know about what that experience taught you about humanness and leadership in today's day and age.
Oh, that's a great question. So I went from an environment where everybody knew me, looked like me, liked me, to an environment that they didn't look like me. I tell this story. It was almost like going to China. If you could just imagine going to China and trying to figure out who's who in the zoo. I had the same experience when I was at that school. Very similar. And I saw people so I was in an environment where I couldn't get out. It's not like I could say, I don't want to do this anymore. So I had to figure out how to make it work. Okay. So over time, what I saw people who didn't know me, who called me names potentially, as well as playing football, being an athlete helped a lot because my high school coach, he grew up in the holler of West Virginia. He's a white gentleman, marginalized, and so he had some experience with being marginalized. And he didn't take no crap,
Yep.
right? So my football experience in that school was very similar to the movie Remember the Titans.
Okay.
One of the differences was my coach was white and one of the Titans was black. Very, very similar. Level playing field, take care of each other, bond together. So I saw people going from calling me names to being my best friend, realizing that everybody wants the same thing. They want to be loved, they want to be respected, and they want to be successful. When my dad died, there was a gentleman who used to call me names on the bus. He developed a relationship with my dad. He was at the funeral of my dad's, you know? So just learning that environment, but because I had to figure out a way to make it happen and do it, and I learned a lot of lessons. I used to say that why would people go on mission trips when there's a lot of things that can be done in the United States?
Sure.
But I met a guy about 10 years ago who had a mission in third world countries, setting up businesses and things like that. He was celebrating his 25th anniversary. He had a bunch of people come in who had been on missionary trips. I was the only one that was there that hadn't been on a missionary trip, right? So I'm listening to these people talk, and all they talked about was how the experience had benefited them, what they learned from it.
Mm-hmm.
So my takeaway from that was when you're in an environment where you're not the top dog, you have to depend on people, you have to depend on language, you have to depend on them to take care of you. When you're in an environment like that, it gives you a whole different sense of humanity, a whole different sense of relationships, a whole different sense of everything. So that's kind of what I gather from as the experiences that I had. When you have those experiences, it's almost like having another language.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you talk a lot as well about this idea of like people wearing masks, like, and it takes a while to get that first mask off to find the real them. What was that experience again through your upbringing, even time at the Naval Academy, that allowed you to kind of find that common ground and get people to take off their mask and see the real human underneath them?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's all about the relationships, and it takes time to build relationships. One of the things that the athletic field and the military do is it causes you to be together. It causes you to get to know each other. You have a common mission. And if you're in a foxhole with somebody or you're on a ship with somebody and you're spending time with them 24/7, you get to know them. And when you get to know them, you get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. But it's no different than a family. Who's got a perfect family? So that time together and that common mission causes that gel, which happened on the football team, which bled over into academics. And I've seen that same pattern throughout my life.
Yeah, absolutely. That one really resonates with me too. Again, I was a submarine guy, did 4 submarine deployments, and I'll tell you what, you never have like real human conversations until you're on day 74 of an underway with no fresh air, no sunlight, eating beans and rice, and you deal with pure misery, right? You really start to get to know people at that point, right? Like you're saying, all of the above, and I think it's something, obviously, again, me too. Basketball player, athlete, grew up my whole life surrounding myself in environments that were different than my upbringing. And again, I'm so grateful for the game of basketball and for the military for doing that to me, right? Like it's made it so clear that the point that you made, which I love, which is at the end of the day, everyone just wants to be loved, they want to be respected, and they want to be successful. And that's the beauty of being an officer in the military too, is when you graduate. So I tell the midshipmen all the time, and like the parents, when they graduate at 22 years old, they're going to have an opportunity to love, respect, and help make sailors or Marines successful. Whatever success means to them, whether that's promotion through the ranks, whether that's getting out and going to school, getting a job, moving back to family, they have a real opportunity to make an impact in people's lives and do real good. And so I appreciate you talking about that and sharing that experience, because I think it's so important. And it's something that you talk about. You already used the term one time, and it was repeated over and over in the book, which is, again, this idea of taking care of your troops, right? It's something you learned as a result of your military in your day-to-day now, whether it was actually like in the civilian world or in your coaching. How do you apply those like Naval Academy leadership principles, those military leadership principles of taking care of your Marines, taking care of your troops when you work and consult with like actual corporate executives out in the civilian world?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. This is an additional learning that I've had over time. So when I was working for Colgate-Palmolive in Kansas, my boss and I had some oil and water type issues, not getting along. My boss's boss sent me to some training at the Center for Creative Leadership, which is one of the top leadership institutes in the world that's non-academic. It was actually founded in 1971 with a military model. Anyway, I went to a program called the Looking Glass Experience. The Looking Glass Experience would bring in 21 executives, and they would take different positions in a company, and then they'd run their company for a day, and then you get feedback and debrief throughout the rest of the week. So I did that. And at the end of the week, you have to tell the person that's leading it what's the most important thing you need to do to become a better leader. So I go through that the first week, and I talked to the lady that's leading, and I said, I think I'd like to become a facilitator. She says, really? She says, if you can come back 3 different times and train with the lead facilitator, I'll certify you. So part of my developmental plan was to get certified. So I got certified, and over time I did probably 10 of those sessions. That's 10 times 21 people, high-powered executives all over the world. What they would say 99% of the time when the question was, what's the most important thing you can do to become a better leader? They would say, work-life balance. They would say things like, I'm on my 3rd wife. She just filed for divorce. I got 2 kids. One doesn't know me. The other one's on drugs. I got 60 pounds overweight, and I had my 3rd stent put in. That's what high-powered executives were saying. So I don't care how much power you have, how much money you have. Everybody's got issues, just like I got issues, okay? So me as a leader, my number one goal is to, number one, tell you where we want to go, figure out how I can help you. I use the join up process when I join up with organizations, or people join up, or either I'm the leader of an organization and I join up with people, or I come to a new organization, join up with people in a simple process. I talk about myself, a little bit about myself, as transparent as I can. If I say, one of the things I talk about, I say, I'm a stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma survivor, So I'm very transparent about that, growing up and stuff like that, ask them to do the same, and then I say, well, one of the things that I need you to do is, if you see me doing something that's going to be detrimental to you or the organization, I need you to tell me that as soon as possible, right? And then when they tell me something like that, I got to say, thank you very much, whatever it is, right? The other thing I say is, I have some basic expectations of you. I need you to tell me the truth. I need you to do the best you can. And right, those are the basic expectations that I have. Treat people with respect. What are your expectations of me? Okay, find out. And then I say, okay, so how can I help you? That's a question I ask them is, you've been around here for a while, so what are the 2 or 3 things you think can be done to make this organization a better organization? I write all that stuff down. Okay, so if I do anything that they say, I got a friend for life. I say, okay, so how can I help you? And when I say how can I help you, that's personally and professionally.
Sure.
They might say, I have a special needs child and I have a difficulty getting childcare. Okay, if I can use a resource to help them with that, that person will knock down heaven and earth to keep me around, But it's basic taking care of your people. You take care of your people take care of you. If you don't take care of your people don't care of you. And some of the people that have the most power don't have a title. Sometimes you got a janitor or a housekeeper that's the HR consultant for everybody, and everybody leans on, but they don't have a title, but they got about a bunch of influence. And when I join up with organizations, I don't start making decisions. I ask a bunch of stupid questions before I make any decisions. And I find out from them what needs to be done, and anything I can tell the organization that is what they told me to do, I've already got a fan club.
I love it. Again, I just and it's so directly translatable to your time as a junior officer in the fleet too. As silly as it is, but it almost goes back to your point of it. You don't need a title. You don't need to be the captain of the ship. You don't need to be the skipper of the aviation squadron to make a positive impact, to care, to ask how you can help people, and then actually follow through with the actions to help them. Right. And it's really special. And I appreciate that feedback. It's incredible. And one of the, I would say, the interesting pieces, especially for like being a JO or being a, again, division officer, a platoon commander, whatever the case is this idea of feedback. And so this is what I want to talk about, because I love this story that you tell in the book, which is early in your time at one of your first civilian jobs, you're going out, you think you're doing a great job. You're like, I'm crushing it. And then you have your first feedback meeting and they're like, nah, dog, this is not going well. And so I'd love to hear your opinion now on this idea of feedback and receiving harsh and critical feedback and not allowing it to crush you, but rather, again, taking it, utilizing it, and then being proactive to address it.
It's one of the top lessons I think any leader or anybody can learn to be successful, whatever success is and how you determine it. Because I know what I know. I need to know what other people know.
Sure.
And the only way I can know that is to listen. I need to do a lot more listening than talking. That's why I have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So I'm working for Procter & Gamble, and we're getting great results. I had my first feedback session with my boss, who happened to be a 1972 Naval Academy graduate. Okay. He was a varsity wrestler and Marine Corps officer, sharp guy. And so for the feedback session, you have to write how you think you did, going into the session, right? So he gets feedback from his peers and writes that down in his feedback. And we go into the session. And he first listens from me. How do I think I did? And as far as hitting the quality and the production and leadership and stuff like that, right? So I told him that. And then he told me what the feedback he got from himself and from the other people that were his peers. And I'm thinking, oh man, I was shocked. And he says, well, what are you going to do about it? I said, they've already made up their mind. What can I do about it? Mm-hmm. He said, you can do something about it. He says, go back to those individuals, tell them you got the feedback, tell them what it was, and you ask them what is their advice on turning the feedback around. So I did that. I listened. Fast forward 6 months later, flip the script. Transformational lesson. And that I've seen that happen over and over and over. So you gotta, depending on where you are in an organization, that's why I do the join up piece. It's kind of like informal feedback. That's what's going to really drive the organization. So you want to get others' perspective, do what they think you need to do, and that's how you win.
Yeah, I love it. All right, team, taking a quick break in the action, just to provide a little case example of what I do for my for-profit job with the Vermeer Group. I actually had a plebe mom reach out to me a couple of weeks ago saying that her family was interested in moving to the Annapolis area during their time in Annapolis, and it was a little bit of a corporate relocation as well. But we were able to get her in touch with an incredible agent that I know in the Annapolis area super well. She's been a sponsor mom for a long time, knows the Annapolis area like the back of her hand. And literally over Plebe Parents Weekend, a little before and after, they were able to go look at homes. And so it's a perfect example of what I love doing, connecting people into the Annapolis area as well. So if you're thinking about moving to Annapolis for either your primary residence, or you want to buy a home that you can maybe visit a couple of weekends and rent out the other time, then please shoot me a message. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn, send me a DM, or you can email me at grant@thevermeergroup.com. I'd love to help you out and get you connected, especially if you're coming to the Annapolis area. So thank you so much. Let's jump right back into the episode. And I love it. It was the funniest story to me, because I was like, there's so many times where I've been that, like, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm filling out a review, like, I crushed that. Like, that was so good. And then you realize you're actually not acting in accordance with like what the people who are evaluating you are actually looking for, right? And to have that clarity, to go ask, to be proactive, to seek what they are wanting from you and what success looks like in their eyes, right? And then actually executing on that, it's another beast. And to have the humility to just take it on the chin and go and then adjust your behavior. I mean, that's what it takes. Again, especially in the Navy and Marine Corps, you're going to work for a lot of different bosses, right? Your skippers are changing out every 2 to 3 years. You're getting new, department heads or company commanders all the time. Things are changing. And so it's really interesting. And to have that ability to adjust, to ask for feedback, to get that feedback, take it on the chin, and adjust behavior to work in, the new scope of what people are looking for. It's really good. Now I have
Well, let me ask you another question.
go.
But there's another way that this can be used. So you can proactively
Mhm.
get you some feedback. So when I moved to Cincinnati working for corporate headquarters at Procter & Gamble, I made a point to go and interview with some of the top executives at Procter & Gamble. I met with the president of Procter & Gamble. I met with the fastest tracking plant manager at Procter & Gamble, who's a former Army officer. I met with him. And so what I would do is I would meet with them and I say, I want to tell you a little bit about me.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me what I need to be, in your opinion, to be successful. What kind of things do I need to do to be successful?
Mhm.
They tell me what that is. I got a roadmap. So this is what the fastest tracking plant manager, who's a former Army officer, told me. He said, when I get a new opportunity, the first thing I do is I go to my boss and say, boss, what do I need to do to maximize my pay?
I like that.
What do I need to do to maximize my pay?
Mhm.
Not what do I need to do to get promoted? What do I need to do to get the next assignment? Because if I can follow the money, everything else takes care of itself,
That's it.
right? So if you have a boss that has any credibility
Mhm.
and he tells you what you need to do and you do what he tells you 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a pretty good bump,
You're gonna be all
you
right.
know? And that's
You become really
proactively,
valuable.
that's proactively you getting your own feedback
Mhm. 100%.
before you have to go back before 6 months. You're not paying catch up. You're being proactive.
Yeah. I love it. I agree. Stan. Yeah, agreed. I do want to. You said something that was really interesting to me, and I just want to dig deep into it a little bit, which is you said you'll be successful however you define success as. At your point now in life, having a military experience, a civilian career, now coaching, how do you define success? Because I feel like there are a lot of midshipmen and grads out there who are chasing that number one fit rep, that are chasing their order of merit, that are chasing these things. And I just love your opinion on how you define success.
Yeah, I define success, and I got this from somebody else
Mhm.
who was a leadership guru.
Mhm.
The definition is that
Sure.
for me, success is developing healthy, happy, productive grandkids.
Mm, I like that.
Grandkids.
Mhm.
Okay. So if I can develop healthy, happy, productive grandkids,
Mhm.
that's success in my
Okay.
mind.
I love that. How do you achieve that? What in your day to day? What does that look like? What are the habits, the actions you take on a day to day basis to try and make sure that you are successful?
Well, a lot of it is already planted in my kids.
Sure.
Again, I don't interact with my grandkids. I've only got one who's
Mhm.
Carl the Fourth,
Okay.
born 8 months ago.
Yeah.
But
Congratulations.
thank you. So it's my children,
Yeah.
and then having them pour into their children,
Yeah.
right? So for me, a lot of that work is done, but I will hopefully have some time to interact with my grandchild,
Yeah.
and so that's. But I always believe that if you start with the end in mind, for example,
Mhm.
and I talk about this in my book, well, I talk about it in my second book for sure, but there's two people in this world that the only reason they're here is because of me.
Mhm.
That's my kids,
Yep.
right? So I need to make sure that I set them up for success.
Mhm.
So when they become 18 years old, they need to have all the skills that they need to be successful. Okay. That's starting with the end in mind.
Mhm.
So if I start with the end in mind and I do some things like that, then by the time they turn 18, hopefully they'll be able to go into the military if they choose to,
Mhm.
go become an entrepreneur, work on a job,
Yeah.
become an executive, do whatever they want to do, but
Yep.
they have to have the skills to do that. So I use the example of they ought to be able to be dropped in the city of New York City, with a suitcase full of clothes and enough money for a month's rent and food, and be able to make it.
Yep.
So if that's the goal, and you
Yep.
think about, okay, what kind of things do I need to do to prepare them to do that? It's a
Mhm.
whole different mindset. And that's basically what you're doing. Because even if they go to a quote unquote Christian college,
Mhm.
there's wolves in sheep's clothing if they don't get it through the internet.
Sure. Yeah. No, I feel you. and again, it just like it gets me going. I love it because it's message to Garcia. Man, like it's the thing that was instilled with us deeply. It sounds again like your father instilled it in you a ton as well, but the Naval Academy really for the first time for me, which is the idea, you just got to figure it out. Like you got to have the hard work, the grit, the ability to persevere through adversity and just figure it out. And again, that comes through trial and tribulation. It comes through adversity. It comes through getting things wrong a couple times and doing that. So I love that. I think that's a really cool definition of success on your end, and I love it. To kind of transition, this last bit of the episode is really going to be about people and relationships, but especially like now we've been talking a lot about, in a boss setting or whatever the case is, sometimes, as the boss with your subordinates, but I want to talk a little bit about mentorship and relationships. You mentioned in your book, and I love this phrase, which is you get not because you ask not, right? And you talk a lot about the impact others have made in your life because you asked for that help. Can you tell us a little bit about your opinion and what you've learned about the importance of relationship, mentorship, and networking in a personal and a professional sense?
That's a great question. Again, my high school coach, Coach Sparks, he's 84 years old.
Yep.
Is the third most influential person in my life besides my parents.
Yep.
Coach Sparks left Virginia and went to teach at St. Joe in Maryland.
Yep.
Right? He's in the Hall of Fame. I can call him up today. He's 84 years old. I can call him up today and say, Coach, I got a kid that has good character, decent ball player,
Mhm.
and is willing to travel.
Yep.
I can get that kid a full ride to a school if he's willing to do that. And now the person needs to be able to go to Iowa, Kansas,
Mhm.
or someplace like that. But I can get them a scholarship with no money out of their pocket.
Mhm.
But that's a game changer. But so he poured into my life. I don't know how many thousands of kids he's had go to higher levels and stuff like that. But I feel an obligation to do that same thing, So when I was at Procter & Gamble, young managers would come in, listen to them, tell them my take on what needs to be done to be successful and things like that. And building relationships is so important. Naval Academy story. 14 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. 16, no, that was my wife. 6 rounds of chemotherapy and relationships. There was a lady in my neighborhood that was a cancer survivor. She told me about her chemo walk.
Yeah.
I started walking when I was going through chemo. When I was walking, I would say 1 or 3 scripture to get the negative stuff out of my head. And not only was I sick, I was broke. I contacted the president of my class at the Naval Academy. He contacted a classmate of mine named Keith, who recently died about 2 weeks ago. Keith put together a GoFundMe program before GoFundMe wasn't a thing. My classmates and alumni supported me financially for an entire year, many of which I hadn't seen for 30 years because of the relationships that we had with each other. You can have a relationship with somebody, they can open up doors that money can't buy.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask people, how did you get this job? How did you get this opportunity? How did you go to this school? 80% of the time, it will be because of some relationship that they had.
Yep.
Their daddy knew somebody, their coach knew somebody, their mother knew somebody. So if you don't but if you don't build healthy relationships, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yep.
So
yeah, no, I love it. And again, I think it's special to hear that, and especially like the special bond that's created at the Naval Academy too, and the desire to provide support and outreach just based on our shared experience and all this. But I think it's one of these things when I talk about networking, this term, quote unquote, networking, I love the way that you framed it. And it's all about relationship building. It's not transactional. As long as you are building genuine, authentic relationships with people and showing that you care and you want to help, then they're going to want to help you too when that time comes. Right. And it's not a transaction. It comes down to exactly what you said, which is building these healthy relationships. And then when the time comes, asking for help when you need it, right? Because people want to help people, but the only way they know about that and are motivated to do so is when you have a relationship with them. And so, I love that piece, and I couldn't agree more. You mentioned your health there, and obviously a big piece of the Naval Academy experience that we talk about is this idea of weathering storms, right? Of having to sail through storms and come out the other end. Your health was a massive storm that you had to sail through. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, your whole life from Navy to Marine Corps, the difficulties there, the difficulties with your health, and tell us a little bit about your keys to weathering storms. How do we get through adversity?
Yeah, and a lot of it was embedded in me at the Naval Academy,
Sure.
plebe summer. So I go to the Naval. I'll tell you this: I go to the Naval Academy.
Mhm.
I go to a prep school.
Yep.
I barely get in academically, right? I had two roommates freshman year. Both of them validated 2 semesters of calculus. One validated 1 semester of chemistry, right? So those are my classmates, right? So there's this thing about the gouge at the
Mhm.
Naval Academy. I guess they still use it, getting the gouge. Right? That basically means you getting information from your peers and people that you know, so that you don't have to start at the floor. You can start at where they are,
Mhm.
right? And building relationships at the Naval Academy. The first thing we had to do was we had to find out who our company mates were, our classmates,
Yep.
where they live, what they like doing, something about them, and it just kept building and building and building. So building those relationships were so pivotal. But the other thing that plebe year taught me was, you have some adversity. I can remember Parents Weekend, and one of my roommates was from Florida. He didn't have any military indoctrination or anything like that before. Yeah. So Parents Weekend, the parents come up, and after the weekend they leave. He's sad. He's trying to sort things out and stuff like that. So I did some encouragement with him. But what the upper class did was they messed up our room. they put our room in disarray. You got 30 minutes to get it straight, right? So it took your mind off of that to the mission, right? So going through the storm for me, and this is kind of how I got through the Naval Academy. Go through the Naval Academy, you got something to do. You got to put together a plan and keep it moving. Keep your head down and keep it moving. So when I had the cancer diagnosis, okay, doc, what do I need to do?
Mhm.
How, what's the process, and what do I need to do to get through this?
Yeah.
So I let God do what only He can do. I let the doctors do what only they can do, and I do what only I can do. I do my piece, keep it moving, and hopefully there's a good outcome.
Absolutely. And one of the pieces as you're going through that, you mentioned that during that battle with cancer, you would repeat this idea that consider it pure joy when you are faced with trials of many kinds. Why do you feel this way after going through all this? Like why is it joyful to be faced with like true trial and tribulation?
Well, if I think about my life and I think about the stories in the Bible,
Mhm.
some of my greatest accomplishments are on the other end of a storm.
Mhm.
So when I have a storm, okay, God, where's the blessing? I'm looking for
I'm looking for it.
it. Can't wait to see it. And if you have that mindset, that's a whole lot better mind. Because if you have a negative mindset,
Mhm.
I'll tell you. So when I was diagnosed with cancer, my caseworker told me, she said, Carl, you can beat this thing, but you got to have a positive attitude.
Mhm.
If you tell yourself you're going to die, you're going to die
Mhm.
because your body's going to follow it. If you tell yourself you're going to live, you got a shot.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate all of this insight, all of this thoughtfulness. We like to wrap up episodes by talking about the power of a service academy education. And so, I just love your opinion here on why, again, in today's day and age, as we continue to go, why young men and women should consider a service academy education. Like, what do you think the true benefit of this experience has been for you and why young people should still consider it?
In my second book, which is Sharp Leadership Parenting Principles for Rearing Young People,
Mhm.
it talks about what needs to be done to start with the end in mind so that when they're 18, they can do what they need to do. So I talk in the book about how important it is to have discipline. I talk about how important it is to have structure.
Mhm.
I talk about how important it is to have experiences, extracurricular activities. In a perfect world, you'd have one team sport
Mhm.
and one individual sport because it teaches you two different things.
Mhm.
Quitters never win, winners never quit.
Mhm.
Academically, you need to be a continuous learner.
Mhm.
One of the things that the Naval Academy does, and I think the service academies do, that very few other organizations do, if any.
Sure.
You get different people from different places living together with the same mission.
Yep.
And not only these people are some of the best and the brightest in the world. You know, you got athletes, you got brainiacs, you got actors, you got speakers. Any discipline. I can remember there was what they call a talent contest or something like that. My summer, plebe year.
Yeah.
And man, I saw Miss Schumann do all kinds of stuff. Very, very talented. Boy Scouts, something like 20% of Service Academy, Eagle Scouts, and athletics. I mean, it's just so to be able to experience that kind of leadership and that kind of wealth and that kind of knowledge and brain power. I'll tell you this quick story. So after induction day at the Naval Academy, I met this guy named Mark. Mark was from New York City. No, from the state of New York City. He's an all-American, all-state basketball player, maxed the SAT, and was at the Naval Academy. Yep. So after induction day, the end of that day, I got into a conversation with him. He says, man, I am not staying at the Naval Academy. I can't believe I signed up. This is not what I signed up for.
When's basketball practice start, man? This is crazy.
Fast forward. He gets one of the 3 slots, medical slots, at the Naval Academy. Oh. He retired as a neurosurgeon at the Mayo Clinic. Oh. That's the kind of caliber of individuals that come to the Naval Academy.
Yep.
You know, and I'm biased about the Naval Academy compared to the others.
Yeah, me too. You're in the right forum. Yeah,
they're all good, but if you had to pick the best,
you go to Annapolis. It's just
that's right.
It's what it is.
You go to boat school. I can remember the summer before we reported, there was a guy that was a plebe that was on, what was the show called? He was on a game show. I can't remember. Jeopardy. He was on Jeopardy. I think he was on Jeopardy, named Howdy Neighbor. And he said he was going to the Naval Academy summer camp. And when he got there, man, he got all kinds of grief.
Attention in the outside world, all attention is good attention. At the Naval Academy, all attention is bad attention, man. Yeah, right. You're trying to stay under the radar. Radar. Oh, man. That's funny.
Man.
Well, hey, Carl, genuinely, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Before we wrap up, is there anything that I didn't ask that you'd like to, address kind of the audience about or talk about before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. So somebody asked me on the podcast, what's the most important thing that you're proud of? What are you most proud of? And I said this, what I'm most proud of is that I have written 2 books that, in my opinion, are how to navigate this world.
Yep.
And when I'm dead and gone, they'll still be there. Yep. So my first book talks about overcoming adversity, experiences at the Naval Academy, integrating the schools, sports. How do you lose a job without losing your mind? How do you overcome adversity? How do you join up with people? How important relationships are? I had a 17-year Marine Corps veteran, got out of the Marine Corps, post-traumatic stress disorder, became a substance abuser. Then he became homeless. Now he runs a shelter for homeless veterans. He said it's the first book he ever read from cover to cover in his life. My second book, Sharp Leadership Parenting Principles for Rearing Young People, is my take on how to rear healthy, happy, productive young people. I've had Teachers of the Year read it. It talks about bullying, social media, how do you start with the end in mind. And it's fundamental. And each one, it asks questions. What did you learn? What are you going to do differently based on the chapter? So it's no theory in it. It's all stories about my life. This is what happened. This is what I did, and this was the result. So they're 2 very good self-help books. They're easy reads. The first one's on audio and book form. The other one's just in book form, but they're easy reads. And matter of fact, I just had a classmate of mine reading my book named Jeff Tomlin, and we went to flight school together in the Marine Corps. He got out of the Marine Corps and went to medical school. So he's a retired doctor. He read my book and wrote me a nice review. But I've had CEOs read it. I can take that book and do a team building session, workshops, leadership workshop, diversity, equity, inclusion workshop. And it's just a powerful read because it opens up people's minds. And once you open people's minds, you think, okay, what are we going to work on?
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing. Authenticity.
I love it. And we'll put links to both those books like in all the comments and the show notes and everything. But if someone's just listening right now and they want to go search for it, where can they find it?
They can find it at www.carlsharpersonjr.com,
Mhm.
which is my website,
Yep.
and it'll take you to Amazon and you can see it.
Love it. Well, Carl, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Again, I've read the first one. I'm still without kids. We probably could start reading book number 2 here, getting planned out. But
You need to start reading it before you think about just before you think about kids, because you might say, I'm not sure.
hey, I got Uncle Dude. I got 2 little nieces right now, and it's put an extension on the timeline for me. I've opened my eyes to
Use it on them.
reality. But no, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your time today. It's an honor to get to have you on here and talk a little leadership. So thank you so much. And to the Academy Insider audience, I hope you enjoyed the listen. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Well, thank you for what you do, my friend. This is really a great podcast, and it's unique. And I'm kind of biased, but I do believe it's one of the best podcasts that I've been a part of.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Genuinely. Thank you very much. All right. Well, everyone, hope you have a good one. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider Podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.